In 2000, here in the West, we got Pokemon TCG on Game Boy Color, which had already been released in Japan in 1998. Then in 2001, Japan received a direct sequel known as Pokemon Card GB2, Here Comes Team GR. At least that's a translation, obviously. If you were a fan of the original and always wanted a new experience like it, this may be worth looking into. A fan translation was done by AustinSV and has actually been available since 2012. If you want to dive right in yourself, you can. Otherwise, let's cover what's changed from the first game and get a simple primer on the fan translation and its documented development. While the game was released in 2001, the only Gen 2 Pokemon in it are Marill, Togepi, and Lugia. The game specifically features almost all of the 4 main expansion sets of cards, which, to put into perspective, is from the base set up to those Team Rocket cards. There's also most of the Japanese exclusive vending machine series cards. This totals up to 441 total cards being usable in-game. This era of the game also includes its rules, many of which were changed over time for a reason, so feel free to take advantage of them. This includes rules such as whoever goes first can attack on the first turn and use trainer cards. Trainer cards can be used more than once in a turn. You can retreat as many times as you want, and the hand size limit is different. There's also no mulligan rule. You can continuously redraw your first hand if you don't have a basic Pokemon in it, and your opponent won't receive any extra cards. There's a new second island, a more involved story, and a new girl protagonist named Mint. The game picks up right where the first one ends, and after the events of the first game, the island is invaded by Team Great Rocket, who steal everybody's cards and kidnap the club leaders, and it's up to you to fix everything. This time around, you collect coins for coin flips instead of medals. The game's AI is substantially improved upon. Not that you can't manipulate them, of course, but the AI will take advantage of situations they previously wouldn't have. I noticed they don't easily run out of cards either. Also, their decks are more carefully designed. Specifically, the bosses of the game will usually have their main type and a type to counter that type's weaknesses, just as prevalent in their deck. The safest approach I heavily recommend is to go into clubs with a deck of the same type as the club, simply to negate any worries about weaknesses or resistances, at least outside of Psychic. Your opponents will more frequently swap out Pokemon too if they're close to being knocked out, but to accommodate the player building decks more frequently, you get to carry your PC on you at all times, letting you register your decks immediately after making them. You still can't use the same card among your 5 decks on hand, so the best solution really is building your deck, saving it to the PC, and then loading it back when you need it. I'd also like to add that your starter deck is nothing to scoff at and is capable of getting you through a fair amount of battles. Additionally, you'll be given decks that can counter the Team GR leaders' decks on the first island, but by the second island you'll have to get a hold of deck building yourself, and by the later half of that, the strategy of matching the club's types won't be enough. The game also has more tools to help you out. You can analyze your deck to tell you if you have too many energies, or maybe not enough basic Pokemon. The game tries to give you as much advice as possible if you need it, without hitting you with a long-winded tutorial at the beginning. Additionally, the auto deck machine gives you a selection of 70 pre-built decks. You need to have all of the cards for those decks though to actually receive the entire thing, otherwise it throws in substitutes. Clubs on the second island start to introduce extra rules or requirements for duels. These aren't as quirky as they might sound at first though, so for example you'll need 4 Pikachus or maybe 4 Magikarps, or perhaps use only one type of energy. This goes back to my advice then. The game itself tries to steer you into making decks of the same type as the club you're in using the extra rules and requirements. Then bosses will have other rules such as electric types deal 10 more damage. But again, that doesn't last through the entire game, things do get more complicated by that in the later parts. Visually, the game builds right off of the first. Notable changes include new reaction sprites from your opponents, some reworked card art, and the grass club was slightly tweaked. The music is retained too, with new tracks for the new areas and bosses. And now let's briefly talk about the fan translation. The unofficial translation by AustinSV is straightforward. It's solely a translation patch. I don't have much info to share about the mod at play this time. There's a few minor quirks, and a funny caveat is that, likely due to how the game saves cartridge space, some Pokemon species info is shared with attack names, which translated in English just read weird. Otherwise, a machine translation was used as the base, and clearly received plenty of manual input and adjustments along with consistency checks. For a Game Boy Color game with a straightforward narrative, it gets the job done and then some, even succeeding many official translations back then. Some choices feel made to match how games were localized before too, like many trainers have Western names apart from Imakuni. On the subject of space constraints, the game actually accommodates long text blocks really well due to being a card game. Additionally, the patched ROM is around 4 megabytes, which is double the size of the vanilla game, but still within the size constraints of a GBC cartridge. There will be occasional bugs or anomalies, but nothing harmful. It's usually just small visual things. And so now we know about the Pokemon TCG game we never got here in the West. Only time will tell if another TCG title comes to consoles, but in the meantime, thanks for watching. Please check the community tab on my channel for an important update on the channel, if you haven't seen it yet, because this video wasn't long or super eventful one, but there's a reason it took so long to come out. Anyway, next time I'll be back hopefully with a highly requested port review, or the Klonoa port review.